Brothers and sisters, there are moments in history when nations are tested, not just in their economies, but in their spirit. Moments when the world watches to see if a people will bend or if they will rise. This is not only about trade or politics or numbers on a chart. This is about identity, pride, and the divine strength that flows through a nation's soul. Tonight, we speak of India not as a victim, but as a force that carries centuries of resilience. Stay with me, for this story is more than news. It is a journey of faith and courage. The U.S.-India trade tensions did not appear overnight. They were born out of years of negotiations, competing interests, and the shifting balance of global economic power. At the center of the conflict lies the United States' decision to impose tariffs on Indian exports, especially in sectors like steel, aluminum, and certain agricultural products. Washington argued that these steps were necessary to protect American industry, but for India, they came across as punitive measures designed to weaken one of the fastest-growing economies in the world. For decades, India had been a beneficiary of the U.S. Generalized System of Preferences (GSP), which allowed duty-free entry for many Indian goods into American markets. This privilege boosted small and medium businesses in India, providing them with a competitive edge. However, the Trump administration abruptly withdrew this status in 2019, arguing that India had failed to provide the United States with equitable and reasonable access to its markets. This marked the beginning of a sharp downward turn in trade relations. The American stance was also tied to a larger geopolitical narrative. As Washington sought to counterbalance China's rise, India was expected to align more closely with U.S. trade demands. But New Delhi refused to compromise its domestic industries and consumer interests for the sake of foreign pressure. The tariffs were seen not just as an economic strike, but as a challenge to India's sovereignty in decision-making. This backdrop of tensions set the stage for a wider confrontation. India, which had long positioned itself as a partner to the West, now faced the choice of either bowing to U.S. pressure or asserting its independence in global trade negotiations. It was in this climate that the larger economic and political battle began to unfold. When Washington raised tariffs and stripped away India's GSP trade privileges, New Delhi did not remain silent. The Indian government's response was measured but firm, signaling that it would not accept being cornered in the global marketplace. Instead of bowing down to the United States, India imposed retaliatory tariffs on a wide range of American goods, including almonds, apples, walnuts, and certain manufactured items. These products were not chosen randomly. They targeted key sectors and states in the U.S. that held political weight, making sure the message reached both American businesses and policymakers. India's strategy was about balance. It did not escalate recklessly, but it did make clear that every action would have an equal and opposite reaction. This was important domestically as well. Prime Minister Modi's government needed to demonstrate strength to its citizens, showing that India would defend its farmers, its industries, and its dignity. By standing up to the U.S., India sent a signal to the world that it was not a passive player in the global economy, but an assertive nation ready to safeguard its interests. At the same time, India sought to diversify its trade relationships. While tensions with the U.S. escalated, New Delhi deepened its engagement with other markets from the European Union to Southeast Asia and even within regional trade blocs. This was not just economic maneuvering, it was strategic positioning. By expanding its trade partnerships, India reduced its dependence on the U.S. market, making it more resilient in the face of external pressure. India's response also carried symbolic weight. It was not only about almonds, apples, or tariffs. It was about principle. It was about saying that no matter how powerful another nation might be, India would not allow itself to be treated as expendable in the global trade system. In global discussions, the story of India's economy often swings between two extremes: booming potential or looming collapse. Critics, especially in Western media, have sometimes painted India as a struggling giant, an economy weighed down by bureaucracy, unemployment, and poverty. Phrases like the Indian economy is dead or growth is slowing beyond repair have been echoed in headlines reinforcing the idea that India cannot sustain its rise. Yet, this narrative overlooks the underlying resilience that has defined India's economic journey for decades. India's growth story has never been linear. There have been cycles of slowdown, reforms, and acceleration. Even during global crises, whether the 2008 financial meltdown or the COVID-19 pandemic, India showed the ability to recover faster than many predicted. While structural challenges remain, the foundations of the economy, domestic consumption, a young workforce, and a rapidly growing digital sector continue to provide strength. This resilience is what many pessimistic narratives fail to capture. Another dimension of the dead economy narrative is political. In the context of trade disputes, portraying India as weak or faltering serves strategic purposes. If India appears fragile, external pressure becomes easier to apply. However, the reality is that India is among the top 5 largest economies in the world and one of the fastest growing major economies, with a market too large to be ignored. At the domestic level, the government has pushed reforms in taxation, digitization, and manufacturing under initiatives like Make in India. These efforts aim to transform India from being seen as just a service hub to a robust industrial and innovation-driven economy. The contrast between the negative narrative and India's actual capacity to withstand pressure became particularly visible during the trade fight with the United States, when India showed it was not easily written off. When the United States turned its trade weapons toward India, Prime Minister Narendra Modi made it clear that his government would not bow under pressure. His stand was not just about tariffs or market access. It was about asserting India's sovereignty on the global stage. Modi framed the issue as a test of national dignity, portraying India as a nation that could engage with powerful economies on equal terms. By doing so, he elevated the trade conflict from a technical matter of imports and exports into a broader question of pride and independence. Modi's speeches during this period reflected both defiance and confidence. He assured Indian citizens that the country was strong enough to weather external shocks and bold enough to retaliate when necessary. This stance resonated deeply within India, where self-reliance and resistance against foreign dominance carry strong historical meaning. The government's decision to counter U.S. tariffs was presented as proof that India would never allow itself to be treated as subordinate. At the same time, Modi's approach was strategic rather than reckless. His government maintained open channels of negotiation with Washington, signaling a willingness to resolve differences, but only on fair and respectful terms. This balance between firmness and diplomacy helped reinforce the image of India as a responsible global player rather than a reckless challenger. Modi's stand also tied into his broader economic vision. Under his leadership, campaigns like Make in India and Atmanirbhar Bharat, self-reliant India gained momentum, framing the trade fight as part of a larger mission to strengthen domestic industries and reduce dependency on foreign powers. By linking the standoff with his long-term policies, Modi positioned himself not only as a defender in a trade war, but also as an architect of India's economic future. The trade confrontation between India and the United States quickly became more than an exchange of tariffs. It transformed into a symbol of national pride for millions of Indians. In a country with a long history of resisting external domination, the idea that India would stand tall against a global superpower resonated deeply. The fight was no longer just about almonds, apples, or steel. It was about the image of a self-confident nation unwilling to be dictated to. For many citizens, the government's defiance represented a break from the past, when India was often perceived as cautious or dependent in its foreign dealings. Instead, under this trade dispute, India projected itself as assertive, independent, and unafraid of economic pressure. The pride came not only from the retaliatory tariffs, but also from the message that India's voice mattered on the world stage. Each move taken by New Delhi was interpreted as proof that the country was capable of shaping the global conversation rather than simply reacting to it. This sentiment found expression in public discourse, media narratives, and political rhetoric. Domestic industries, farmers, and small business owners felt a sense of empowerment knowing their interests were being defended against powerful external forces. By framing the trade conflict as a matter of dignity, the government tapped into collective emotions that went beyond economics and entered the realm of identity. The symbolism also tied back to India's broader aspirations. As a rising power aiming to be a global leader, it could not afford to appear submissive in its economic engagements. The act of pushing back against the United States became a marker of confidence, reinforcing the belief that India was no longer a junior partner, but a nation charting its own course. While the trade tensions with the United States highlighted confrontation, they also pushed India to recalibrate its global economic and diplomatic strategies. New Delhi understood that overdependence on a single market could leave it vulnerable, so it began strengthening ties with a wider circle of partners. This approach reflected pragmatism, ensuring that even as one relationship faced turbulence, others could provide balance and opportunity. India looked toward the European Union, which had long been a significant trading partner, and worked to expand access for its goods and services. At the same time, New Delhi deepened its engagement with countries in Southeast Asia through frameworks like ASEAN and regional free trade agreements. Japan, Australia, and South Korea also became vital partners, not only for trade but also for investment in infrastructure, technology, and defense. By diversifying these connections, India positioned itself as an integral node in the global supply chain. Another significant dimension was energy and agriculture. India enhanced trade with Middle Eastern nations, securing oil deals while opening up avenues for Indian food exports. Similarly, Africa emerged as a crucial partner, with India investing in development projects and expanding trade in pharmaceuticals, machinery, and services. These moves demonstrated that India was not cornered by U.S. tariffs, but was actively building alternatives that could sustain its growth. Strategic partnerships were also about geopolitics. By fostering closer ties with multiple powers, India signaled that it would not be locked into any one camp. It sought a multipolar balance, where no single nation could dictate terms. The trade dispute with Washington served as a catalyst for this diversification, pushing India to accelerate agreements, attract foreign investment, and showcase its value as a dependable partner to nations looking for an alternative to both the U.S. and China. The trade standoff between India and the United States carried a message that went far beyond tariffs and market access. It was a declaration to the international community that India was no longer a silent participant in global affairs, but an assertive voice that demanded respect. By refusing to bow to U.S. pressure, India demonstrated that its economic policies and sovereignty were not negotiable, no matter how powerful the other side might be. This stance sent a ripple effect through the corridors of global diplomacy. For developing nations, India's response became an example of how emerging economies could assert their rights in an international system often dominated by superpowers. It showed that standing firm was possible, even in the face of potential risks. For established powers, it was a reminder that India had matured into a significant player, whose cooperation could not be taken for granted. The trade dispute revealed that India was not merely seeking survival in the global order, but was actively shaping it. The message also extended into economics and geopolitics. By diversifying trade partnerships, investing in self-reliance, and promoting initiatives like digital growth and manufacturing expansion, India told the world that its growth trajectory could not be halted by external barriers. It emphasized resilience, adaptability, and determination. On the diplomatic front, India's handling of the dispute highlighted its ability to combine firmness with dialogue. Even while standing its ground, New Delhi maintained communication channels with Washington, proving that it could push back strongly without severing ties. This balance conveyed to the world that India was a responsible power, one that would defend its interests but still engage in constructive cooperation. The broader message was unmistakable. India's place at the global table was permanent, and its voice carried weight. This trade battle was never just about tariffs, steel, or almonds. It was about dignity, sovereignty, and the undeniable rise of a nation that refuses to be silenced. India showed the world that strength is not measured only in numbers, but in the courage to stand tall when challenged. By asserting itself against the world's most powerful economy, India reminded everyone that its journey is far from over, it has only begun. To everyone listening, stay strong, stay inspired, and believe in the power of resilience. Good luck in your own battles, and thank you for standing with truth and pride.